all the time. And as I said again in the opening, I certainly support rolling back to 5%. We need to do this, being a border community. And all the businesses that I speak to say it's a great direction we need to focus on. I'll do that. As far as specific cuts, I'm not looking at cuts at the moment because the lack of fiscal discipline that's in the legislature today, we've seen it. We've seen the abuse of EBT reform. There's $400 million a year that's allocated to the Department of Transitional Assistance. We need to do my plan has to do with a top-down, bottom-to-bottom review of government. Look at all the inefficiencies that are there before I look at any cuts, and there is a lot of fat that we need to cut. So we need to tighten our belts up and get serious about our spending problem that's in the legislature. Thank you. Oh, sorry.
I did it wrong the first time.
Sorry about that.
That's no problem. So when it comes to rolling back the sales tax, I think it's important to fully appreciate what that money is applied toward. 1 cent of the sales tax goes toward funding our public transportation system. Another penny from that tax goes for funding the Massachusetts School Building Authority. And I know that everyone can appreciate the tangible good that comes of not having to foot the bill for our backlogged schools that need to be improved. I often hear in this campaign that many of my opponents have taken no tax pledges, or they said we need to roll back or have it graduated, but aren't specific in terms of the cuts that come to follow. And in every instance where we roll back the existing sales tax, we're going to feel it immediately on the back end when it comes to higher property taxes and reduced local aid. So I think that we need to talk about the specifics, and I can certainly speak for myself when I say that my intent is not to increase anyone's taxes when it comes to wanting tax reform in our state. My focus is on reducing the burden for working families in our district. Thank you.
I support rolling back the sales tax, and I was never for increasing the sales tax, and I'll tell you why. Because we need a competitive edge, as much of a competitive edge here in Massachusetts against New Hampshire. We have Plastow, Salem, and Seabrook just across the border. And why should any shopper stay here and shop at the Home Depot here when they can just drive 2-3 miles across the border and get the same product for a lesser price and not have to pay 6.25%? I think what we need to do is we need to really take a good, hard look, close look at areas in the budget in which we can cut. I think there has to be necessary services. We have to take care of our sick, we have to take care of our elderly, and those who cannot take care of themselves. But the truth is really we need to take a good hard look at pensions, we have to take a look at pay, we have to take a look at things like prevailing wage. And I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with unions or there's anything wrong with paying a little extra, but when we're saying for the Whittier Bridge, for instance, over 95, that we could possibly pay 30, 40% higher for that project, that's unreasonable.
Thank you.
I also support reducing the sales tax. I'm attracted by Paul's idea of having a graduated tax. My concern is that representatives in other parts of the state will just sink that because in Western Mass or the parts of the state that border Rhode Island and Connecticut don't face it. So I'm not sure how far it will get through the legislature, but certainly dropping the sales tax because it's a regressive tax. It hurts people of lower and moderate income much more than others. I think we should replace it with an online sales tax. I don't think it's fair for our brick and mortar stores here in the district to be having to charge taxes to people and then something ordered online doesn't have to pay the same tax. That doesn't create jobs here in the district. I will also say there's a detailed report that the legislature, a commission was created to study tax expenditures, which is a fancy way of saying tax breaks that go all the way up to large industries, including the film industry that was mentioned. There are a lot of old tax breaks for businesses in Massachusetts that no longer support struggling industries. We should get rid of those.
Yes, we should absolutely roll the sales tax down to 5%. It'll make us more competitive as a state. And since day one of my campaign, I've had a platform that includes 4 basic areas of reform: welfare reform, immigration reform, pension reform, ethics reform. The reason I picked those is not only because I think Beacon is doing a terrible job at those things, but also because fixing those things will free up a lot of money. Take, for instance, immigration reform. I'm not one of these round them up and ship them back home kind of guys. Far from it. My own parents are immigrants. But what I'm in favor of is requiring proof of citizenship to get any kind of welfare benefits. We don't even know how much we're spending on welfare benefits for illegals. But I do know that if we cut our sales tax, it'll make us a lot more competitive, and I think that's money much better spent than on having a sales tax of 6.25%. It'll make us more competitive, it'll make us compete with New Hampshire, and these are simple things that Beacon Hill could do right off the bat. Will they be easy to pass? Absolutely not. But by making it known to the public, I think we can give some support for it.
The Commonwealth of Massachusetts currently has a very low unemployment rate relative to the rest of the United States. And one of the reasons that has occurred is because of the policies that we put in place to ensure that we have large reserves, which allow us to borrow at a very low rate of interest relative to public projects. That has to continue, and I think there's consensus about that in the legislature. Again, I get back to the concept of, a tenth of a point here, a tenth of a point there is not going to make us more competitive with New Hampshire. But if we continue to promote policies that give tax breaks to business, that reinvest in their business, both in terms of employment and also capital improvements, those businesses will grow, and that is the best way to improve our economy and keep our businesses competitive.
Thank you to all of you. We're switching to a different topic, and we will begin with Mr. Tooley. There are studies now. There are studies that suggest, more than suggest, that homelessness is on the rise in Massachusetts. Would you support increasing funding for temporary and permanent housing, or what other solution would you suggest?
As you mentioned, we have a serious problem in the Commonwealth, and I would support increasing funding. And it goes back to what I said before. It's prioritizing. And I used zero-based budgeting previously because it's extremely important. And matter of fact, Senate Minority Leader Bruce Tarr and then Senator Baddour was in favor of zero-based budgeting. Didn't get anywhere, but as the next state senator, I'll make sure it happens. Once you start doing that, every item is on the table to justify each expense, and moreover, that allows you to take the item, look at every single item, so that your priorities match your budget, because everything is driven that way. So everything's on the table, and to answer that question, I would be in favor of doing that, and the way to do that is eliminate wasteful spending and be fiscally responsible. And that's how you get more money to these particular programs that are a high priority. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that we would need to make sure that we have the resources available because homelessness is on the rise and because of the downturn in the economy. We're aware that people are unemployed a lot longer than they thought they would be. We know that because of the mortgage crisis, residents are dealing in a situation where they're upside down with their mortgage payments and in the hole. We know that everyone is struggling, and we don't necessarily see that changing in the near future. So what that gives to me is a sense of urgency that we need to make sure that we reduce all wasteful programming, any type of unnecessary bureaucracy, so that we can fund the tangible needs for the people in our district, so they are in a position again to contribute to the economy and live with dignity and get out of a temporarily bad situation. So I think that's the responsibility of the next state senator, to be committed to that detailed, hard research and be committed to getting rid of the waste so that we can meet our residents' needs on this very troubling issue. Thank you.
I don't think anybody should be homeless, especially in today's day and age. But I was shocked to realize the number of homeless folks that are in Newburyport, Salisbury, and Amesbury alone. I had this discussion with a retired educator about a few weeks ago, and I was just amazed at the amount of folks in my own hometown of Amesbury that are homeless. So those who are homeless need help, and they need help through education, training. They need the support of others that have the mindset to be able to, put them to work, to be able to, get unemployment, to get employment, and get, a house over their head and provide for their children. But unfortunately, we see a lot of folks, and I see it in my industry, a lot of folks that do take advantage of the system. I think what we're creating is we're creating a reliance on government systems without providing enough education, training to get these folks from being homeless and, unemployed back to work with a roof over their head and shelter and being able to provide for their children. So I think it's going to be through education. I think it's going to be through training. I don't think anybody should be homeless. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think we need to look at the funding for homelessness right now. I still say that the best solution to any of this are reforms that give people jobs. If you're able to work, you should be able to find a job. That will help some of the homeless. If you're not able to work, or if you just can't care for yourself and you need help, then we have to figure a way to do it. But, this whole issue of zero-based budgeting to solve a problem like this, I couldn't disagree with more. I talked to Representative Dempsey. He's the chair of the Ways and Means Committee. He knows a lot about the budget. He does it every year. I asked him what would it take to do a zero-based budget. He said it would take up to 2 years. You'd have to hire hundreds of people and staff to get it done. And what do you do during that 2-year period? So you're looking at adding money to the budget to pay for this. And then what do you do during that 2-year period? I don't think that's something you do in times like this. We need action now. So we need to look at nonprofits and get their help. We need to look at other areas of the budget where we can trim down and we can make things more efficient so we can focus and allocate money where it belongs in areas like homelessness and healthcare. Thank you very much.